the world has changed in the last 10 years. Social media, everything that's happened politically, what have you. How has parenting changed from your first kid to your fourth kid?
I don't think it's changed much for us. That's not a big enough of a difference in 9 years.
Okay.
I think the difference is our era to the 20-year-olds today, like a David, versus my kids. I think it's 20 years is how you gauge it. I don't think 10 years is enough to gauge the difference.
So then answer the initial question. Has parenting changed?
50 years?
Is it easier to be a dad today? What was his question exactly?
It's easier to be a dad today versus 50 years ago.
Is it?
I'm going to tell you what. There's an
aspect. You're going to let him answer it?
It's tough to answer that question because I don't think you'd be a single father 50 years ago. I think it's a different world today.
But if you were
50 years ago versus today, it's probably going to be harder 50 years ago than today. The part that's going to be tougher today is the way the dad decides to be an involved dad versus not an involved dad.
Right.
Like, there's many ways you can make parenting easy today. You got a shitload of distractions. They're so easy to be a parent today. But to be a father who's leading his kids, that's a lot harder today than 50 years ago. It's a lot harder today than 50 years ago. If you want to be a true father that's leading your kids.
That's right.
Because 50 years ago, how did you get your porn? How did you get your porn when you were 14 years old?
I've never seen it. I'm still waiting.
Listen,
40 years
some
later.
of your friends that got porn,
It
how
was
did they
magazines.
get it? Okay.
Yeah.
It was magazines when you were 14 years old.
He's blushing.
Okay. And by the way, even if it was magazine, give me the most hardcore thing you ever saw in a magazine.
Oh, BBD.
Here we go.
Hardcore?
Yeah, what are you going to see?
You saw it all.
There's no way in the world you saw it all. 14 years old.
Penthouse Hustler?
Penthouse Hustler wasn't that hardcore.
Whatever they had.
Do you know what's today's hardcore? Like, you know what's
I didn't live in Chatsworth in 2002. I don't know.
We were baptized in Chatsworth in the name of Ron
I
Jeremy.
saw some stuff,
Right.
but I don't know. But,
You can only see so much in that, and the accessibility
Well,
of
where
like
you
a
go- where you
phone.
going with the point?
What I'm trying to say is there's way more content today to psychologically mess with a kid's mind today than 50 years.
Facts.
So if you want to just be a father, have sex, have a kid, you just let them be distracted by an iPad for 18 years. You can easily do it today with video games. But you ain't raising a leader. It's just a kid. It's a very, very different mindset you have
100%.
on the effort you got to put in.
50 years ago, people lived with their family unit more, too. So even if you were a single dad, chances were that your family unit was very, very close by. You had sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, mother, father, very, very close within that community as well. There wasn't the idea of my sister lives in Chicago, my father lives in Boston, I live, you know what I'm saying? Like the family unit was geographically closer, so you'd have more of an insulated, support system. One of the things that you have to deal with today that's very, very difficult, though, and we just saw this with the election, the education secretary Cardona, the state is trying to take over control of your kids. That's not something you had to deal with 50 years ago. You didn't have. They literally asked. He was at a Senate Judicial Hearing Committee, and they said, who is, I forget who the senator was, asked the Biden Secretary of Education, who is the primary stakeholder in a child's education? The guy wouldn't answer. 1.5 million people have taken their kids out of public schools in the last year and a half because of differences in political ideologies and what they feel like is extremism being taught in public schools. And then the guy won't answer. And then the senator doubles down and goes, does the parent have the primary right to make decisions over a child's education? And the guy finally circles back and says, no, the state has just as much of a right. This is a community issue. He won't say that the parent is the primary stakeholder in a child's education. Children, your kids, that guy's kids, are a cultural battleground now.
Yep.
The kids are battlegrounds.
So therefore, back in the day, do you think, like when we're talking about parents, you think they put up with that now?
Yeah.
Those parents?
No way.
No way. No.
I can't see
You can't see your granddad, or you can't see your father.
See any teacher or any administrator ever in a million years telling my grandfather, we have more of a say over your child's education than you do. My grandfather would have done things to that administrator that would be, years in jail today. Years in jail. For sure. There's no way. There's no way that they would have even had the gall and wherewithal. And this guy was he was a local 40 iron worker. He liked education, but he didn't really care. He's like, join the union with us. We don't really care. The school was daycare for them. He knew all my uncles were going to join the union with him. So school was daycare. He didn't really care. But if they tried to tell him how to raise his kids, essentially, He would get his literal Irish up, and that would have been the end of that, for sure. So for the education secretary to sit there, for the whole world to say and say, no, the state has more of a say than the parents do. I mean, how do you take that? Like you said, you're the
Are you
kid.
kidding me? Do you realize what that does to me when you say something like that? I mean, it's just pathetic to make a comment. I mean, that's exactly what they want, though. They would like to be able to do that. And you as a parent have to not fall for that.
Yep.
You as a parent has to be involved. You as a parent have to be so involved with the kid where you don't lose your kid. Too many parents are losing their kids because they're not involved enough.
What do you mean? What do you mean by losing their kids?
He just said it, like with the iPad, with the being distracted, and all those things, not being participant.
But they're losing your culture.
So let me explain to you. Let me explain to you how this thing works. So I read a book years ago called "Thank God It's Monday," right? And "Thank God It's Monday" is this guy who's a psychologist, talking about how most men in America cannot wait for it to be Monday to get the hell away from the wife and the kids because they want to be away. They want to be free. They're saying, thank God it's Monday rather than thank God it's Friday because Friday, the whole weekend and the kids and the babysitting stuff starts, right? So he's saying he watched all this stuff with marriages, what was problematic. And he said, what I found out, relationships and marriages and parents that worked, they gave individual time to their kids regularly. So if you're married, you come home, you talk to your wife 10 minutes. How was your day, babe? You go to 10 minutes, one-on-one, right? Then you go to your kids. So tell me, how was your day? One-on-one. Then you find out one of them needs a little bit more time. Then you go and talk to them for 10 or 15 minutes, one-on-one. That one-on-one time takes effort. And most parents don't want to do that. That one-on-one time takes effort. It's just like in sales, that one-on-one time with your client, that one-on-one time on follow-up, that one-on-one time of writing the card to them. Most people don't want to put that effort. No. So
That's the dinner
today,
table, though.
Parents are losing their kids because they're not having that one-on-one conversation with their kids.
That's right.
That's why I said when the guy asked the question, he's right. It takes a lot more work and effort today than it did before because you have more things to question today as a kid.
You have to be more vigilant.
You have to be today.
You have to be more passionately present. You have to be more passionately
Passionately
present with your own offspring. These are your offspring.
Well,
These are
Phil,
the one that holds your legacy. And like what Pat's saying, I mean, we've all seen Pat with his family and stuff, and he does a great job. He's very involved. But how many parents are actually doing those things? And then, like you said, it requires effort. You're supposed to grow them, but you're not feeding them.
No, it's not. It's not easy, man. Listen. That's why I understand the argument today of not having a kid. I fully understand the argument today of not having a kid. When people make the argument of not having a kid, I get it. You're better off not having a kid that you're not going to put time into than having a kid and, saying, I don't have time to put the time into because you're just helping out the institution more. Okay? So you don't do it then. Then you're right. I respect the person that says, I sat down with a guy, okay, one of the most powerful CFOs in America today. He was an AIG CFO when they went to the government and raised $183 billion. Successful guy. Within 5 years or 6 years, they pay back the 183 plus $21 billion of interest. They were the first to pay back AIG. As much as people trash AIG, they paid it back. GM still hasn't paid back. They paid it back. I said, so how long have you been married? We've been married for 30-some years, 20-some years. So how many kids you guys got? We don't have any kids. Why not? My wife and I chose 30 years ago that our careers are our kid. Okay? So now, when a person hears that, what do they say? What a freaking moron. What a moron. Why would you make your kid, Then another person will say, I would never do such a thing. Maybe not a moron. And another person may say, well, what if they actually sat down and talked about the fact that they're not going to be able to put the time into their kids that they'd like, and it's not fair for the kid. Okay, great. That's actually better processing. There is a form of processing. So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.